Has anything strange, paranormal, scary happened to you, and no matter how hard you think about it rationally, you cannot explain what happened? When I was 13, my uncle went out of town and asked me to stay at his place to keep an eye on it. I invited my buddy to come spend the weekend with me so I wasn't alone. We were hanging out in the attached garage watching TV around 1 a.m. when I realized I forgot to turn off the pool pump. When we opened the garage door to the backyard, we were flooded with this overwhelming smell of burning meat. Right when I smelt it, I was overcome with a feeling of dread, and my gut told me not to go outside, so we immediately closed the door. As we closed the garage door, my uncle's dog started barking and growling at the other door, which was open and leads into the house. She was barking, growling into the darkness of the hallway. As we slammed that door shut, the electric dartboard went haywire. It was making all sorts of crazy noises and flashing all of the lights like the entire thing was short-circuiting. Then out of nowhere everything just stopped. The feeling of dread went away, the dog stopped barking at the door, and the dartboard shut off. We did not sleep at all that night, and thankfully my uncle came home the next day. I'm not really sure how to rationalize all three of those things happening at the same time. A few days before Princess Diana died, I had a dream my grandmother came into my bedroom to tell me Princess Diana died. Probably just a bizarre coincidence, because Diana was all over the tabloids, so maybe she was just in my subconscious for that reason? Still kinda weirds me out, though. When I was 12, I had just came home from school, and as usual I was the only person in the house, siblings at friends or after-school programs, parents at work. Anyways, I walked into my kitchen to grab a snack, and I immediately felt this weird sensation that I've never felt before. I got really sick to my stomach and made my way to the dining area and just collapsed onto a chair. I sat there with my head hanging down when it had just hit me how silent it was. I lifted my head and gazed the room for a bit. After about 20 seconds or so of just pure tense silence and nothingness, I relaxed a bit when out of nowhere this loud noise came from directly beneath my chair. It literally sounded like if paper was being crumbled. I leapt out my chair, and as soon as I did, I just hear what sounded like a little girl giggle, followed by these soft but loud footsteps running down the hallway away from the kitchen towards the front of the house. I slowly backed into the wall behind me without taking my eyes off the door leading to the hallway, and then proceeded to make my way to the back door. Once I reached it, I bolted out of there and ran to my friend's house, which was only 3 houses down from me. I called my mom at work and she told me to just stay put. That is still the most unexplainable thing to ever happen to me. I was driving along a very remote stretch of road. No houses or population for hours in any direction. Wasn't paying much attention as I wasn't expecting any living soul in the area. However, I ended up passing a woman wearing some kind of white robe. As I passed her, I noticed she was waving her hand as if she was asking to hitch a ride. Half-heartedly I went back. I could still see her in my rear view. I usually don't offer to hitchhikers ride as I'm advised against it by my parents. However, I'd feel really bad to let someone be out there that late. But once I reversed back to her, she was nowhere to be found. I could swear I had her in my rear view mirror the whole time. But there was no trace of her in the end. This is super mundane, but it happened to me at work recently, so might as well share. Went to use the woman's bathroom, and when I went in, all the stalls except 2 were full. There are like 8 stalls. I go in to pee for like 2 minutes, and when I come out, all the stalls were empty. I didn't hear any doors open, any toilets flush, any hands being washed, or anyone walking around. Also, a cup of coffee that had been on the sink counter when I walked in was still sitting there. So in conclusion, ghosts are nasty and don't wash their hands, and one of them forgot their coffee. Probably not as extreme as some others here, but when I was about 13 or 14, I was walking home from being out with a few friends. It was around 9 p.m. in late autumn, so it was pretty dark at this point. On my way back, I had to walk down a road that was the only way to get into my estate, so despite it being dark and it looking fairly sketchy, I wasn't concerned, having walked through there 100 times before then. When I was about halfway down, I felt a hand grip my right shoulder. It didn't just feel like something touched me, it squeezed my shoulder with a good amount of force, and when I looked over my shoulder I was greeted by nothing but thin air. Safe to say I freaked out and proceeded to run the rest of the way home. Upon a bit of paranoid research, I found out somebody had killed themselves in a house on that road not too long before my passing by. I've always just hoped it was an overactive imagination or something, but I've never fully convinced myself. It was a normal night. The family all had supper, watched a bit of TV, and then headed for bed. It must have been an hour later when we all heard the tiles in the ensuite bathroom start to crack. It was the scariest thing I have ever heard in my life and lasted a full 5 minutes. I called out to my parents and they told me to stay in bed. I'm not sure if they checked it out, but when I went the next morning, all the tiles had pulled away from the wall, but none of them had fallen off. I'm sure there is a logical explanation, at least I've hoped for one my entire life, for what happened, but for 10-year-old me, it was terrifying and spooky as hell. I was sitting in my classroom in grade school when all of a sudden I had this overwhelming sense of despair hit me out of nowhere. It was like that feeling when your heart drops to your feet but magnified tenfold. I turned to a girl next to me and told her I feel like something really bad just happened. I learned later that day my brother jumped off a 15-story building literally right before I told my classmate. She found out the next day why I wasn't in class and apparently had to be sent home. I actually talked to her somewhat recently and it still freaks her out. I heard someone singing directly under my bed. There was nothing under the bed that it could have been: phone, iPod, radio, speaker, or whatever. It sounded like a woman literally just laying under my bed singing. I jumped off my bed and looked under and there was nothing, but for some reason the room felt so much darker under the bed. The singing stopped as soon as I jumped off. I haven't heard it since. My only paranormal experience was when my friends were all sitting around a patio table at my friend's really old mansion. His parents were rich as hell. Nobody else was home in this like 24-room house. It was nighttime. Then out of nowhere, creepy opera singing starts up. We all look at each other and bolt inside. We all sit down and try to explain what happened, but we didn't know where to start. It was just really clear opera singing, nobody else around for half a mile. Was my only can't explain this moment. On my teen days I was online dating someone from another country. I was deep in love at the time and she said she was going to see a friend. I didn't have anything to do so I went to bed. I started to sleep awake, I don't know if it's the right word for it, and at first I started to listen to voices and I couldn't figure out what they were saying. Then I saw 5 or 6 people laughing and drinking in a living room. I woke up and wondered about it before sleep again. Next day she posts pictures and it was the exact place and people I saw, besides her. At boarding school I had this big, loud-ass alarm clock. Unmistakable. Well, one day I forgot to set it or something. I wake up at 9, sun shining through my window, it's a new day. And I'm late to class. I rush to put on my uniform, brush out my hair, get my shit together, skip food or brushing my teeth, get out the door. This whole time I'm praying for God to turn back the clock so I won't be late. Now, this dorm has alarm doors. They turn on automatically from like 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. Anytime the door opens between these times, the fire bells go off. As I'm running down 3 flights of steps, it's getting dim outside. I dash out onto quad into the gray misty morning. The sun hasn't risen, but still illuminates the sky. A single monk is walking by, and I ask him what time it is. The 5 o'clock bell just rang, he tells me. I realize I don't know him. It's a small school, most everybody knows everybody. I thank him, confused, and head back to my room. By some miracle, the alarms don't go off. I go back to my room and browse on my computer, mystified by my experience. No one believes me.